we looked up after 12 months of putting that new comp plan into place, like, whoa, we are really, this is really kind of negatively impacting our company at this point. Our goal is to get them converted in 30 days, and in many cases we can. But there are those that take longer than that, and don't put all your eggs in one basket. I think we all fall into that trap. Even if you're having success today with your company, continue to think of other opportunities that you can be pursuing.
Thank you for joining us. I'm here with Doug Diakite with NCR. You do residential real estate stuff. I met Doug a couple of years ago, got to join him on his podcast, and we've had a few conversations. So, Doug, I appreciate you joining me and coming in for a conversation today.
Good to be here with you, Kurtis. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So let's give a little bit of background on your business, not necessarily a history, but just like what you guys do to help us understand and kind of get some context of where we start this convo.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are we acquire single family residential real estate. Our main business model is rent to own. So we offer lower income families the opportunity to come in with below average credit. So these are families that can't qualify for a traditional mortgage, and through our program they can get on the path to affordable home ownership. And if they make all their payments for 5 years, we will offer them full-term seller financing in the event that their credit still isn't able to qualify for a traditional mortgage.
Cool. And what I thought was interesting when we first talked is, like, I first had the conversation, I'm thinking, oh, you guys are just acquiring stuff in California and like there locally, but you guys are acquiring stuff nationally, and kind of through a unique, acquisition strategy. So can you kind of talk about how you guys acquire properties?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of investors are sending out the postcards and they're sending out mailers and they're blowing up phones with text messages to try to find distressed off-market properties. That's not something that we have had to do. We have been fortunate. We had a partner that we started working with early on when we first started developing this rent-to-own business model. And his superpower was going to conferences and meeting with the individuals who run the disposition groups for banks and lenders. So banks will foreclose on properties, and the lower value assets that they're foreclosing on, rather than individually listing each of those and managing all these listings, the banks would prefer to bulk them, throw them onto a big list, send them out to investors like us. We submit bids, and our goal has been over these last years to take down 8 to 10 homes a month through that channel. So that's been a pretty special opportunity that we have had to be able to, not have to do the onesie twosies. We've been able to go in and purchase in bulk over the years.
Well, it's great to have a very clear channel with what are like very clear outcomes from that channel, like once you get your system down, and that's a great thing. But what you mentioned us like kind of talking about is you guys had been in business for 11 years now, had a lot of success. And then you came record year in 2022 is what you said. And then there was like a downturn in 2023. So let's talk about what happened there. What was the downturn? What kind of went on there, and what that looked like for you guys?
Absolutely. So when we got the opportunity to start bidding on these lists, initially we knew this couldn't last forever. We would get lists of, it was probably 5,000 properties 10 years ago on these lists, and we'd go through and we would bid anywhere from 60 to 100 properties in a month in the hopes of winning 10 of them, getting bids approved on 10 of those. And over the years we saw that list go from 5,000, 4,000 to 1, and to today now it's under 100 homes on that same list. And so we kind of did see that the list was shrinking. However, in 2022, after having already done it for several years, to have our highest acquisition year, we felt very bullish on where we were with our acquisition opportunities. And you plan accordingly, and you staff up accordingly, and you create your machine and your systems accordingly. So during that time, we had been adding 1 to 3 team members a year, kind of on average over the 2014 to 2022. Our team grew to, I think it was 12 or 13, in addition to myself and my business partner by middle of 2022. And that size of an organization was designed to accommodate, all the acquisitions that we were making at that time. So we were building up so that we could support, being able to bring on 8 to 10 new homes a month. And now we roll into the following year, and things changed on us a little bit. And we can
So,
talk about.
and yeah, I was gonna say that's where uh, sometimes you feel like business is, oh, it's going too well, and then that's when that happens. And let's talk about what was the major change, because if they were naturally decreasing over time, what was the breaking point? Like what caused the change in 2023 that where you said your acquisitions were cut in half from 22?
Yeah, we like I said, the lists were shrinking. All of a sudden, we had a month where we got, 8 to 10 homes in 2022. And then the following month, it was like 1 or 2 that we got approved. And then the month after that, another 1 or 2. And then there was a 0 in there. And so after a few months of a steep drop off there, we were bracing ourselves for, oh, maybe this channel is like going away entirely. Like maybe we won't have this opportunity into the future, and we have to pretty quickly figure out alternative ways. So one of the things that we did at that time was we had a guy um, who had worked with us previously as an asset manager, and he was one of the team members responsible for when we would acquire a new property, he would market it to find a family to come in and do the rent to own program for each individual home. And he did a great job, but he was able to find himself kind of a higher level full-time position. So we parted ways with him years prior, and then all of a sudden he left that job and he calls us up and says, "Hey, I'd love to come back and work with you guys. What opportunities are there?" And we said, acquisitions is really our biggest need right now. So would you like to come on and do some acquisition work for us? So we brought him back on, and for 2 years he did our acquisitions just through retail mostly. So he would go on Zillow, and we gave him a buy box, and he would go out and find properties and help us close on them on those acquisitions. And there's plus and minuses when you buy that way versus buying the off market bulk purchasing that we do. Obviously, you get to go in and take a closer look at the property, inspect it, get a title policy, et cetera, et cetera. So there were some benefits there, but the pricing was different. You don't get the same type of discounts when you buy retail, of course. And so that was one of the things that we did, and he was helpful in helping us continue to grow when the other source wasn't producing what we needed. And but it still wasn't enough. So even with his efforts, we were able to boost acquisitions, but it was still a pretty significant drop off from the prior year. And now we have team members that we've brought on and made a commitment to, and we want to retain. And so those were kind of all the headwinds and challenges that we were considering at that time.
When you think about, that steep drop off, like obviously there was a drop off in the list, but were there any other conditions like that you were in hindsight or at the time aware of that caused that drop off to be so steep all of a sudden?
I wish I had a clear answer. It's always been a bit of a mystery. So like
Yeah.
even though we've been purchasing from this same seller and they put out this list and there's familiarity with the process and of how we do things, how we acquire the property, fund on it, the deed process, everything's kind of unique and different about buying through this channel, but we've never quite been able to determine, what's happening behind the curtain over there. And so all we have visibility of is how many properties are on the list, and then obviously we're running our numbers on it, like monthly payment can we charge here for our rent to own? In addition to rent to own, we also do some flipping. So if we see a property on the list that's we can tell for varying reasons that's not going to be a good fit for the rent to own program, we'll look at it and say, oh, well, we have a realtor in this market, so we could buy it and at a discount and flip it. So that's something else that we do with these lists. And so we have all that same, strategy of how we, run our bid calculations and all that. But why the list was shrinking, it was always a mystery and remains a mystery to us. So it was just kind of like, okay, this is the new landscape, and where do we go from here? What do we do now?
Honestly, that's probably a better answer than if there were some good things, because that is so often the case in business, is like stuff just quits working and it's can't make heads or tails of it. And it's just like,
Yeah,
okay, well,
sometimes there's like no rhyme or reason apparently that you can decipher.
yeah. And it's infuriating, but it's also like, that's just typical. So from your team perspective, with this, you have the acquisition side, and then you have the rent to own side. Sounds like you have some of the flip side. So your head count, and kind of your overhead, is it management of that flip of that rent to own, real estate? What's that kind of look like for you guys, and why was that drop off? Was it because you hired in advance of your need, or what made that so catastrophic is probably a dramatic word, but what made that so difficult
Yeah,
when it slowed?
yeah. So when we started the company, it was really just myself and my two business partners, and we did it all. In the beginning of running a company, you have to wear all the hats, and so when we first kind of proved the business model and it was working, and we saw that it had legs. Our first position that we hired was an asset manager to help us with the marketing work and getting folks into homes. So that's kind of where it started off. So I would say we had probably at least 3 asset managers on the team before we hired an operations person to assist with some of the support staff, the support admin responsibilities of the company. And so the asset managers, it was interesting too, because we would have them wearing a lot of hats when they first started working with us. Like, so they were doing the marketing, but then they also, like, if the property needed bids to get some work done on the house, they'd be responsible for that. Collections, they were fully responsible for that. So we had them doing a lot, and we realized, let's take something off of their plate, so that they can focus on doing the main thing, which is the marketing of these properties and getting them filled more quickly with strong terms. Little by little, we start building out, more operations roles, and the asset managers are firing on all cylinders. Like, when we're buying 10 properties and we have 4 asset managers, that allows us to give 2 or 3 a month to each asset manager, which was working out great. And then the support team then has that extra work to do, because it trickles down from the asset manager, and then there's a lot more support on the additional properties that's required. So so that's how you start kind of building based on the acquisition levels, and then you go from 10 properties a month down to 4, and now all of a sudden your asset managers are only getting 1 a month. And the comp package that we created and set up for them was based on them getting 2 or 3, occasionally 4 a month, right? And so that was kind of the biggest hit, was now our asset managers don't have enough to earn the incomes that, we wanted to help them earn, or give them the opportunity to earn, I should say. And so we made some adjustments on collections commission, because they were still involved in collections. They are still involved in helping the families once they get into these homes. And we adjusted their collections commissions to offset the drop off in their conversion commissions on the new RTOs that they were setting up. And so it's hard to tweak it just right, because obviously you want to pay fair and reasonable to all of your team members and give them a ton of earning opportunity. And at the same time, you have to keep the company's financial needs and health in mind as well, of course. And so that's a tough balance to strike, especially when you're in an environment where you don't know what your acquisitions are going to look like in
Yeah.
6, 12, 18 months. And so you do the best you can with the information that you have. But essentially what happened, what we chose to do at that time was, okay, they're not earning enough on their conversions. Let's boost up the collections commission. And so we went really aggressive in increasing that for them. And that helped in the short term with them being able to earn what we're hoping to be able to offer them. But we looked up after 12 months of putting that new comp plan into place, like, whoa, we are really, this is really kind of negatively impacting our company at this point. And we got to take another look and make another adjustment. And it's always easier as a leader, as a boss, owner, partner, to increase comp. Everyone's stoked when you're increasing the comp.
Right.
But when you increase it by too much and then you fast forward 6, 12 months later and you have to make another change in the other direction, that's where it becomes really painful and tough for everybody. And so we had that moment as a company where, okay, we made the comp plan a little too rich based on, what the acquisitions and what the financials of the company were. And now we have to go in the other direction. So we made an aggressive move last year to correct for the previous move. And we weren't sure how it was going to play out. We weren't sure how the team would react. We anticipated there was going to be some fear and anxiety created, with the new proposal that we were putting out. And in anticipation of that, normally we would make a comp plan effective the first of the upcoming month. We gave a 90-day period, a freeze period, basically, where we could give them a heads up at the end of Q3 that it would take effect at the beginning of Q1. So there was really a full 90 days for them to brace for the changes that were coming and for them to be able to plan accordingly for their financial situations.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's like you build the whole model on one specific comp plan and now the model breaks and you have to make that. Well, there's a reason you weren't doing comp on those collections anyway, right? Because you want to incentivize on that other. So it's like when you're forced into that, you can very quickly be in a situation where financially the numbers just don't work as well as what they did before, right? Curious when, if 22 record year and then 23 down year, like when did you realize in 23, was there a moment that you realized, oh shoot, we're going to have to make some changes? What was that moment when you realized, oh, things have changed, not just this, temporary change, but when was kind of the oh crap moment that happened with that?
I think, it's funny because the team was still working through some of the acquisitions that we'd had in prior months,
Yeah.
so like our goal is to get them converted in 30 days. And in many cases we can, but there are those that take longer than that. And so there was like a backlog of assets that the team was still working through. And so we kind of saw it coming, but the team was still busy. They're still working on these assets. And then, so I would say there was like a 4 or 5 month lag probably, where it still seemed like everything was fine. And like, who knows, like next month the list could pop back up and we might be completely fine. And it didn't. And then the team is looking around and going, gosh, I only have now 1 asset in my pipeline or 2 assets in my pipeline. And that's when we pretty quickly jumped to, all right, let's get the leadership team together and look at where can we offset this and give them a boost. And so I would say we pretty swiftly came in and made that change. It was the later change where we had to move the comp back down, where we took some time and we had conversations over probably a 2-3 month period of like, okay, what are some ideas here? How can we redesign this whole comp plan and how do we deliver it? How do we communicate this? And so we were pretty quick with boosting it up when it needed to be, dialed up, and we took our time and were really thoughtful about how to do it when we dialed it down. And comp's just hard. I would say for most companies, if you have more than just a couple employees, comp is very challenging, unless you're a business that's just consistently spitting off cash, and even then, it's still hard, probably to not overpay, right? But yeah, we've had our team for a long time. The people that have been with us, most of them have been with us 5 years plus now, and they stuck with us through all that. We didn't know if they were all going to be able to make it work with us with the new comp plan, and they've all stuck with us. And I think it's a testament to how we treated them and how we go out of our way to treat them fairly with comp and just in general across the board, even in the hard times that we have.
Yeah. So 2 comp changes in a matter of 2.5 years, really, to have the team stick with you. What do you feel like you mentioned, obviously been there and had some loyalty, but why do you think that what was the primary factor that caused them to stick with you?
I think one of the big things is we've been a remote company since day one. So, a lot of people during COVID got to experience work from home for the first time. And people prefer work from home. Most people do, right? And it's not a good fit for everyone. Some people like the buzz of the office and being able to walk in to their manager's door and have the face-to-face. And there's clear benefits to having that. But I don't know. We from the very get-go, I worked out of a home office. My business partner worked out of his home office. And so as we started adding team members, we just had them all remote. And we built our systems accordingly. We operate using Slack, and that serves as, a great way for us to communicate. Instant Messenger. I'm sure many listening to this have used Slack or at least familiar with it. And I think the remote work from home piece has been a huge help in us retaining team members, and also the flexibility. So most of our team, we have hourly team members. We have 8 hourly and 4 that are commission based, and even the ones that are on hourly have complete flexibility of schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of ask for general when what are your general hours that work for you, so we can again plan accordingly, and so that the rest of the team can know when they can expect to reach you. And people like that. I think there's probably opportunities that they could have to go sit in an office and do a 9 to 5 and probably earn more. But there's a lot of value, I think, to work from home, work remote, and have that flexible schedule. And then they know at the end of the day, on top of that, while they might be able to earn a little bit more doing a job where they have to go in every day to an office or cubicle, they know we do our best to try to be fair with comp and to treat them as professionals. I think a lot of those jobs in the office, people don't feel like they're treated as professionals by their superiors and their managers. There's a lot of micromanaging. There's a lot of, you need to be in at this time and out at this time, 30-minute lunch, and we don't do any of that. So I think they also like the feeling of being treated as a professional.
Yeah, I think there's something too when you have to be there at a certain time and you can leave at a certain time. Is you may say that you base stuff off of results, but the reality is there's that background feeling that it's the time that you're there that you're being compensated for, not the result that you're getting them. And I think what you said, if you're building that on trust and the result that they're getting, now even with the comp changes, they're able to see that, oh, this is still fair. We're still being treated the same way. even if we have some uncertainty, we're willing to stick it through to see it, because again, you've created that culture and that relationship that is there with that. So I think that's a good call out. We've obviously talked about a few ways that you address this. One, you had the sales guy, the acquisition guy come in, and you looked at some other channels. You've adjusted comp. What other things did and have you guys tried, and what worked, what didn't work, as you had to shift the business from this one channel to now finding a way to continue that growth?
I would say, bringing on additional people that can help with acquisitions is one thing. The other thing is just looking at your financials and making adjustments accordingly. Like, as we're talking about, like, now we're set up where we still have all the same team, but we are finding ways to do with 4 or 5 acquisitions a month with the same amount of team, and still find ways for them to stay busy and earn good incomes. For example, we looked at when we get to the end of the 5 years, and a lot of these folks, their credit doesn't end up getting there, but we've guaranteed that they will get full-term seller financing at the end of the 5-year initial lease. And so we put more work now into that transition piece of, okay, now that we know, especially that a lot of these folks are not going to go and get traditional mortgages, as many as we thought probably initially when we started the company. They just like our program. They feel comfortable with us. They've been making their payment on direct deposit to us for 5 years, and a lot of them just say, you know what, we'll stick with you guys. So we've made it more of a refined process, you could say, when they finish that 5 years and we transition them into seller financing. And that's become kind of a bigger piece of our business, especially now that we've been doing this for longer. We have more people that are reaching that 5 years than we did a few years ago. So that is another opportunity for our team to earn income, another opportunity for our team to kind of add value to the company. And so we're kind of always looking at opportunities like that. What in our process are we currently doing where if we don't have 10 acquisitions and we're getting half that, what else can our team be doing to add value? And we're kind of always asking that question and coming up with ideas on how to utilize the team that we have in place.
Yeah, that's great. And with that shift of, okay, so now not all your acquisitions are coming from that list. You're now doing some acquisitions, basically retail acquisitions. You'd mentioned earlier another program that you guys are looking at doing. Can you kind of talk about that, of how the other way that the business is shifting is you guys look to kind of continue expanding? Yeah,
absolutely. So we found that kind of accidentally, strategic partnerships have been such a huge part of our business. And, when we first started working together, my partner and I, we were buying non-performing loans. And that was kind of what he and I both had a background in doing. And we kind of stumbled into this rent-to-own business model through another guy that I had worked with at my old company. He brought us this business model. The three of us sat down and we decided, let's start a new 3-man partnership. And our company today was born from that strategic partnership of him bringing this business model, him bringing his access to product and inventory, and then us bringing capital and operational support. And we look back on that and say, and we think, wow, what an incredible strategic partnership that was born, that turned into all this that we enjoy today. And so that's kind of where we've shifted our focus, I would say, over the last year. Like, we've had some little, one-offs here and there with some, realtors and contractors that, we've done a couple deals here and there. But we're really looking more to kind of create deeper relationships with some local partners that can either help us grow our flipping business, or who can help us grow our rent to own business. But the big thing I think that we would look for from a strategic partner is someone who has local market expertise. So because we're in California and all of our deals that we do are outside of California, finding someone that's local that knows the market and can either provide intel resources as a realtor or as a contractor, or both. We have a guy who we've done a couple deals with lately that offers both, or younger investors too that are up and coming. They've gotten a few deals under their belt, but really looking to scale and need a partner that's been doing this for a long time, like we have, to help come in, put some capital behind them and some expertise behind them operationally. That's another kind of idea that we're looking to develop with these partnerships.
That's so interesting. So like when we work with businesses, a lot of times we come in and we look at the business model canvas. I don't know if you're familiar with that tool, but it looks at the business model and you try and identify all the different elements of the business model. But so often, and this isn't wrong, it's just people develop one acquisition channel, and because that acquisition channel is working, that's all they have the capacity to do, to just maximize that channel. And you want to maximize that channel, right? Because you know, and you can then repeat the process over and over again, and you kind of know what that you know the ins and outs of that channel. But what that inherently does is it creates risk in the business, right?
For sure.
Because what you guys just experienced was that potential risk. And so in 23 was when you experienced that. So then that shift is now you still have this channel, though that channel looks different than it did before. But now you also have two other potential channels with the internal acquisition person who's doing research on their own, doing retail acquisitions. But then you also are looking at these strategic partnerships. And I think that's really interesting because without that setback, maybe someday you would have got to the point where you're doing that stuff. But that setback is really what forced you into that next step or next iteration with that business.
Absolutely.
So I think that when you then look forward is, sure, there's the setback, but if you look at where you guys are today, I would argue that you probably are a more resilient business than what you were in 2023 when you're relying on this one, because you're now going to be able to explore and have multiple options. When you think about where you are today versus where you were then, where do you feel like the business is better than it was in 23?
I think you hit the nail on the head. That really, the success of that one channel created a kind of a crutch for us, and we became too reliant on one source. And we really did say it for years. I mean, we kind of knew it, but like you said, when you're having success, it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Mm-hmm. And we were operating based on that mindset and mentality, and it leaves you vulnerable, like you said. I mean, it puts your business at risk, and what we found also is, like, we've known this for a few years now, but it really is difficult to kind of change what you've been doing that's been working. And so
right.
We have put time, energy towards kind of finding new ways of doing it, new lines of business, new strategic partner relationship opportunities. And so we are working all those lanes, and it's interesting just how challenging it is. It takes a lot of time, focus, effort, energy to develop those and find one or two other ways that the company can earn money and kind of diversify its operations.
Yeah. And if you're Doug's information will be in these show notes. And so you can reach out to him. If you're one of those people that could be a strategic partner, realtor, contractor, young investor, that's done a couple of flips, that's trying to, find their way with that, feel free to reach out, because I think that could be a good opportunity. But even that strategic partner model is going to require a shift in your business as well, right? So what have you guys had to change about the business now that you have that strategic partnership model that's different from what you did before?
I would say that we're still kind of in the experimental phase with like a handful of different relationships. So we're still pretty early on. I wouldn't say that we've changed the structure of the business in any way based on any of these new relationships we're working. Some of these are old, long-standing relationships that we're trying to grow, and figuring out a new structure with each of these unique individual relationships is going to require what you're talking about. But we're still at the beginning stages. Unfortunately, in the business that we're in, having this portfolio that's buy and hold, we have consistent recurring income from the portfolio. And so while we really do want to grow these other parts of the business, it's nice to have those continuing to perform and provide income to cover the company's expenses.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
As opposed to like a flipping business. It's like, okay, so
Yeah.
you're flipping 20 homes a year, and all of a sudden now you only get one or two. Now you're sitting there with scrambling to make it work on one or two flips when you're used to doing 20. That's a whole nother animal, because you don't have that consistent recurring income. So that's been the nice thing about our business, is it feels like it gives us time and runway to be able to explore these other possibilities.
Yeah. Well, and it's like we didn't hit on this, and I guess the kind of in between the lines is the the shift in 23 wasn't a shift that, because you have that incoming recurring revenue, like it wasn't a shift that the business was going to break completely, but it's like the comp structure broke with the team, right? And so that breaks the business, because that's where the majority of the work is. And so that is where you've got to reevaluate that structure, and so, but the ongoing requires less maintenance than that. So as you look back to 23, I'm curious, like we've obviously hit on a number of changes you made, ways that that you've shifted, ways that you addressed it. But if you were to sum this up into, say, one or two lessons learned, that things that if you could go back, you would potentially do differently, what primary takeaway have you had from that experience?
As we just kind of spoke about, I'll say it in just a slightly different way, is that don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all fall into that trap. It's very easy to do as a business owner. When something works, it's very easy to put all your eggs in one basket. So I would recommend to folks, even if you're having success today with your company, continue to think of other opportunities that you can be pursuing, and make sure you're not leaving all your eggs in one basket. And then the second thing I would say is remain adaptable too. I think those two things kind of go hand in hand, but what I mean by that is one of the things I love about my business partner who I work with is he's very adaptable. And, before he got onto this rent-to-own business model, he was a general contractor, he was a flipper, he was buy and hold with standard rentals, and then he got into notes. So he's adapted and gone through so many different iterations over the last 20 years in business. And you really have to do that. You have to be adaptable. You have to know that what's working today isn't necessarily going to work tomorrow, and be ready to pivot, be ready to adjust, be ready to do what needs to be done today based on the current conditions. And I think if you do that, stay adaptable and don't put all your eggs in one basket, you're setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Actually, when I was kind of thinking about it, as I was thinking about that adaptability is something that you've built into the business to this point because you've had to do it so many times. And so I think that's a huge skill to have, that makes you flexible to, no matter what comes your way, be able to find a way through. And I think that is the primary entrepreneur skill set that's hugely valuable, right? So that's great. Um, I will add on, this is, nothing is ever completely black and white, right? And we're always playing in that gray area. And me being financially and risk focused from that financial lens, I look at, um, you want to have more than one channel. But there's also the world where that more than one channel is distracting as well. And so you got to know when when is the right point within the business to go hard at one channel versus when is the right point in the business to diversify to provide that. And I think one thing for you guys is while it broke your comp structure, it didn't really break the business. So I think you could even argue that maybe when you see the numbers going down, that's when you start exploring. But it wasn't until you experienced that really drastic drop that you saw negative consequences from maximizing that channel. So
Right.
I think you can make some, you can go back and say, okay, when we saw the numbers dropping, we should have gone this direction. But I think there's a valid argument to say, well, no, let's keep maximizing this channel as well.
No,
And
absolutely. Yeah, to add on to that point, yeah, you don't want to be running in too many different directions because we've made that mistake too. There's the shiny object syndrome where there's a lot of exciting different things and you want to go after all of them at once. Um, and yeah, you lose focus and then you won't have success in any of them because you're trying to chase too many different things at once. So that's the other side of the coin. So you do need to be careful about that. And then the other piece is it is about timing and identifying the right time to go after that second opportunity and build out that second opportunity. I think if your primary business is operating and functioning at a high level and you have the systems in place and you have the right team that's running it, then hopefully that frees up the leaders of the company to then also to be able to put some time and focus into the second thing. But only after, yeah, you already have, the machine built over here, the team in place and everything running smoothly. So
yeah, that's a
you don't take your eye off the ball, but that should free you up to be able to allocate some time towards the next big thing.
Yeah, no, that's a great call out. And well, thanks for having this conversation today. It was great to hear a little bit more, learn about the business a little bit, and hear the lessons that you learned. And I'm sure for me, it's helpful to think about that interplay between those right channels and even that adaptability of like, okay, maybe you chase one channel, but if you're really quickly adaptable, then that allows you to just chase one thing. So it's good food for thought, and we'll be, cheering you on as you guys continue to go on this journey. So thanks for joining today.
Awesome. Thanks, Curtis. Appreciate you having me on. And yeah, to all the listeners out there, I think you're providing a great service in this financial information because Lord knows all of us in the business need it. So thank you
Yeah,
for what you do.
absolutely. Everyone needs it, and just spend a little bit of time on it. You'll be a lot better than the majority of people, right? Because no one knows what they're doing. So, uh, anyways, thanks, Doug.
That's right. Thanks, Curtis. Appreciate it.